Singapore is charging ahead with plans to be a world leader in using AI for the global good. The first ever conference on AI is being hosted by the country. For more on Singapore's goals and using the tech for good, we're joined by Communications and Information Minister Josephine Teo. She is also Minister in charge of Smart Nation and Cybersecurity.
And also joining us is Professor Chng Wee Joo. He is Professor in Oncology and Vice President of Biomedical Research at NUS. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening, Dawn. Good evening, Jill.
Minister Teo, let's talk about the fact that Singapore wants to be able to be a leader of sorts when it comes to AI. There's been a great deal of emphasis in that, but we do face some stiff competition globally. There are bigger countries who are also trying to sort of keep the pace. How do we compete?
Well, Dawn, being small has not prevented Singapore from developing world-class aviation and maritime hubs, as well as being leading players in advanced manufacturing and financial services. When it comes to AI, observers do point to the fact that there are few preconditions that must be in place. They include, for example, the need for talent, and we're talking about creators, practitioners, as well as users. We will need industry to be able to develop and deploy AI. We will need these to be backed by a robust research ecosystem. We will need guardrails, to make sure that the AI that is implemented is both trustworthy as well as responsible. We will need infrastructure like compute resources, and we will need international partners, including much bigger countries. So in a nutshell, we will have to look critically at our own value proposition and what we can bring to the table. And as it turns out, in all of these areas, Singapore has got good foundations. So we think we have a shot.
You mentioned putting in place those guardrails, Minister Teo. When it comes to artificial intelligence, the threat landscape is just so much more complex than with traditional methodologies. How concerned are we about tackling those new threats? I mean, how are we preparing for this?
Well, I think we take a serious attitude towards all the uncertainties that can come with AI implementation. But in truth, how these will manifest themselves really depend on in what sectors they are most used and in what context. So the scenarios matter. And in the case of Singapore, we've taken a serious approach to AI governance. Even when we introduced our first edition of the National AI Strategy, not many people know this, but preceding that, we had actually introduced a AI governance framework. And so as we have updated our National AI Strategy, we will at the same time be looking at how we need also to refresh our governance framework.
Prof. Chng, perhaps bring you into the conversation. Now, healthcare, it's one of the national AI projects in Singapore. And for healthcare itself, the national project objective is on chronic disease prediction and management. And that's where AI is meant to help prevent and better manage chronic diseases. So I'm wondering why these particular areas have been selected and how can we exploit AI for this purpose?
Yeah, I think chronic disease represent a significant burden on healthcare in Singapore. So there's good reason to choose these areas to tackle because the impact will be greater. And also it's very consistent with the direction of the Healthier SG going forward as well. When we talk about population health, I think what is important is an ability to segment the population, to identify high-risk individuals. Not just high risk from developing disease, but with high risk behaviors as well that may lead to long-term chronic disease. And these are the kind of problems that AI is particularly suited, when they can integrate data from the population to segment. But the second important thing is really when we talk about behavioral change and intervention to improve health, we need to take a more individualized approach because you can't use one single method for a population that is heterogeneous. And this is also where the prediction, the ability to profile individuals' behavior, you can then use this to deliver very specific nudges, cues, incentives for the individual to actually improve their behavior so that their health can improve as well. And this is important for prevention and also to prevent the chronic diseases from developing complications that will lead to increased morbidity and cost to the healthcare.
So an important preventive tool. It can serve that role. I mean, using AI can also leapfrog a lot of the existing sort of traditional medical solutions that we have. It can fill the gap when you don't have as many doctors or healthcare workers as you might need in specific jurisdictions. I mean, in your field, it's also made a big difference in developing innovative medical solutions. How have you actually used AI technologies in your work in cancer treatment and management?
Yeah, so in cancer, one of our biggest problem really is that one size doesn't fit all. Different cancer patients, even when they have the same type of cancer like breast cancer, may be very different. The other issue that we face is that we actually have a lot of drugs that are very effective now. So when you have a lot of drugs and you have patients that are very different, the key problem is what drugs do I choose for which patient? And again, this is where AI come in, where they can integrate different data in a very rapid manner to find the best combinations for the individual patients. But not just that, we have also started studies to actually modulate the doses of these drugs for the individual patients to achieve the best outcome while reducing the side effects. Because again, most of the time we treat everyone with the same doses of the drug. Yeah, but everyone is different.
Minister, in order to realize this AI vision that we have for Singapore, you need a lot of talent, a very specialized talent as well as, Prof. Chng there. So where are we going to find this talent at the quality that's enough to take on the role of championing their respective fields?
Yeah. It's a really interesting question. Well, in the process of developing the National AI Strategy 2.0, we engaged something like 300 experts, both in Singapore as well as internationally. What was really quite encouraging was that many of them gave very specific suggestions on the areas that they believe that Singapore should focus on, but also they expressed the interest and the willingness to be part of our growing ecosystem. So the enthusiasm is certainly there. I would say, however, that within the Singapore workforce, we also hope to grow the same kind of enthusiasm. Because in the way that we think about AI, it's really more of augmented intelligence, meaning that individuals in whatever work that they do, they have this as a tool, as part of a repertoire, and a toolkit, that can help them to work better, both in terms of productivity as well as in terms of what they can enhance in quality. So that's the kind of way that we are thinking about it.
Right, so for the rank and file Singapore worker, is that how we're going to sort of, juice them up and get them inspired, get them enthusiastic, as you say, give them use cases so that they can actually experience what it would be like to level up?
Yes, I think we want people to have a sense that this is a skill they can master and not something that, will be beyond them. And we are quite mindful that there will be concerns about displacement from jobs. And we have to take these kinds of things seriously. But what gives us a sense of hope and a sense of confidence is that if you think about the Singapore economy for many years now, we've actually created more jobs than we have people for. And so for a country that is fundamentally constrained by the size of its workforce, then AI can be the kind of very valuable force multiplier that can help us to go further than we would otherwise be able to. But at the same time, I think we want to not underestimate the amount of adaptation that individuals and maybe even whole occupations will have to go through. Now, fortunately, I think for many years now, we've built up a system, of continuing education and training. We have Skills Future as a foundation that can hopefully help us to intervene, much more quickly and also in a very nimble way. I also believe that in the Singapore context, tripartism, where the unions and businesses work very closely with the government to help workers to adapt, that will also stand us in good stead.
Prof. Chng, just very quickly, this is just the beginning, I imagine, for AI within the healthcare sector. What's next?
Well, what's next is actually, the use of AI as well as a new kind of large language model like ChatGPT to actually better integrate complex, because I think in medicine we often have to integrate complicated issues, different data to actually reach a diagnosis. And we can use AI to actually make this process much more precise, much faster. And this will help us actually better diagnose patients and give better, more appropriate treatment to each individual patients that come our way.
Well, I have to thank the both of you for your insights today. I've been speaking with the Communications and Information Minister Josephine Teo. Together with Dawn, we've also been speaking with Professor Chng Wee Joo from NUS. Thank you both.
Thank you, Jill.
very much.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.